Here we go. 3, 2, 1.
Hello again, folks, and welcome to the second edition of the Crypto Realm here on Paranormal UK Radio Network. I am one of your hosts. My name is Ronald Murphy.
And my name's Deborah Hatswell. Thank you to everybody for joining us.
Absolutely, Deborah. I must tell you that I am flattered to be on the show with you because I consider this to be your show. You're really the one that put this all together, and you also produce it. So, like I said, I'm glad to be here with you once a week talking about strange critters from around this great planet of ours.
Oh, well, thank you. That's wonderful of you to say, because for me, I'm very flattered that I'm talking to you, Ron, because you have a fantastic reputation in the crypto world, the Fortean world, and so does Eric, which is our guest this week. So
absolutely.
I'm going to get to meet some people that I haven't spoken to before that have a massive amount of knowledge that I can pass on to the guys here in the UK, and we can just roll forward with that.
That's right. Now, originally, we wanted to have Eric on as our very first guest, but there was some gremlins running amok and Skype wasn't working perfectly. So we decided to have him on as our second guest, which he's here. And I've known him now for probably going on 17 years now. And the way it all began was I had an unusual experience, and the internet was brand new at this time, and I typed in the search engine, I typed in Bigfoot in Pennsylvania, and there was only one group that came up, and that was the Pennsylvania Bigfoot Society, and Mr. Eric Altman was the lead of that. He was the guy that put this all together. So if it was not for Eric Altman, I would not be here talking with you this very day.
It's absolutely wonderful the way that happens, isn't it? For me, it's a similar thing. I know Eric from his work with the BRFO. And when I was setting something up here in England, I thought, what's the best way that I can go about getting people out there? And I thought that what the guys in Philadelphia and Pennsylvania and all across the States are doing, they've made one group, the BRFO. It was the first thing that I'd ever heard of me, and I thought, that's fantastic. That's what I need to do. Get as many researchers out in as many areas, get in touch with the witnesses. So I wouldn't have been here either if it wasn't for the work that Eric did back then.
Yeah, we stand on the shoulders of giants in this business, don't we? I mean, this is really how we deal with it. We look at other people's research. There are people out there who are really, they're out in the woods, they're gathering the data, they're taking the eyewitness accounts, and then you and I are sitting here talking about it in the comforts of our own room, which is great. I mean, we also do things in the field, but you know what I'm talking about. As radio hosts, we're actually very pleased to have these types of people on with us. So I think without further ado, let's bring Eric on in. Eric, my friend, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Ron, and thank you, Ron and Deb, for having me on. I really appreciate it, and thank you very kindly for the nice words.
Well, you know what? In this field, again, and I hate to harp on this point, there's a lot of good people. But on the flip side of that paranormal coin, there's also a lot of ingenuous people in the field as well. And people that you thought you were your friends will, somehow not be there at the end of the day. And I feel for you, my friend. I mean, I have been involved with groups that I, thought were my friends, and now, down the road, it finds out that it's not to be that way. But you stayed true to this field, no matter what anybody has said about you or anybody has done to you. And that's the kind of people that we really like, isn't it, Deborah? The people that stay with it and toe the line regardless of the situation that they're in.
I think you must have a passion for it, like me, Eric, I would imagine. Do you mind if I ask what got you started? What got you interested?
Oh, certainly. My interest in all things paranormal, cryptid, UFO, strange and unusual began at a very early age. I was around probably 8 or 9 years old, and I used to watch a lot of cartoons as a kid, of course, and I was big into sci-fi and the horror genre. And the afternoons they would show different drive-in theater movies on television, different sci-fi horror movies, that sort of thing. And I had such a keen interest in the subjects. And there was a movie called The Legend of Boggy Creek that was directed and filmed by Charles B. Pierce. It was put out in the early 1970s and was playing on TV that one day, and I happened to catch it, and it just enthralled me to think that this movie that was made as a docudrama based on supposed events that took place in Fouke, Arkansas, and Jonesville, Arkansas, actually took place. And I was fascinated by the film, and I wanted to learn more, and that began my trip down the rabbit hole to where I am today.
That's an excellent way of putting it, isn't it? It is a trip down the rabbit hole. You start off with one set of ideas, and years and decades on, you're a million miles from that place. Is it like that for you? Is it the similar thing?
Oh, it's changed and evolved so much over these past 20 plus years that I've been at this. I can't imagine, when I first started, I was so naive and green. As a matter of fact, Ron was one of the very first cases I had the privilege of going out and actually talking to Ron and his brother and his mother and investigating. And that, as I said, led me down the rabbit hole. And at that point in time, when I first got into this, I was believing that there was something out there because of all the books I read and all the research I'd done prior to going into the field, but actually meeting eyewitnesses, sincere eyewitnesses, credible eyewitnesses, such as Ron and his brother, who experienced things, that convinced me that there was definitely something worth investigating, trying to get to the bottom of this wonderful mystery that we're all looking into.
I think for me, and probably the same for Ron, I obviously can't speak for him, I think it's the witnesses that keep us going. It is for me. No matter what goes on around me or how I feel about my research at the moment, there's always that next witness. And I meet them, and you see the fear in some of them, don't you? And you can see how troubled they are. And that kind of leads me on, and I think, well, no, there's always going to be another witness out there, unfortunately. And they need places to report.
That's right. They need people they need not only a listening ear, because it's okay. I mean, just a lot of times we serve the position of a priest hearing somebody's confession, it seems like. But I think they also need to have somebody that has a skill set that can actually point them in the right direction or investigate what they saw, because it meant so much to them that they want to share it with you. Yes. And the way I look at it, it should mean so much to me that I want to investigate a little bit deeper as well.
Yeah, and for me, there was nothing in the UK. There was nowhere to report to. I was 15, it was 1982, so there was no internet, there was nothing. And there was just nothing, there was nowhere for me to go. I mean, at least in America, you have Bigfoot stories, the word's out there, people understand the concepts of it and what it is. So, but it's still not easy to report, is it? There's still the ridicule attached for some, unfortunately. Don't know why, but...
Yeah, the stigma might be dying a little bit, but what is your feelings on that, Eric? Do you think that people are more readily to come forward, or do you think there's still that enough stigma to keep people in the shadows yet? Hello, Eric. I think, did we lose Eric? We may have lost Eric. Oh, wait, I thought I heard him again there. Are you there, Eric, my friend? Okay, he is there. Great.
There is still some stigma involved in the subject matter. I think people are still reluctant to come forward and report what they've seen, but I also think it's much more accepted than it was, say, 5 or 10 years ago. The whole genre, the subject of Bigfoot, is so mainstream pop culture now, and people see it in commercials, they see it in news, media, print, television, movies. It's everywhere. Podcasts, groups, researchers. They're everywhere nowadays, and I think people feel a little bit more comfortable coming forward and talking to researchers and investigators, sharing their story. But I still think there is some stigma involved with it because it's not a scientifically accepted animal that it definitely exists. Still a lot of mystery that surrounds it. So there is, unfortunately, still some stigma involved where people may be a little reluctant to come forward and share their stories.
That's right. I think here in America, Deborah, Bigfoot has become a very commercial It's a commodity. I remember I was at a conference here in Philadelphia over the weekend, and I was driving back. Right in about the middle of the state, there was a radio network that came on, and it was called Bigfoot Country here in the middle of central Pennsylvania, and I mean, so that was their selling point. We also have a Bigfoot pizza and Sasquatch pizza, and it sells our Slim Jims and our meat sticks. So Bigfoot has become such a popular character that I think that it almost becomes a caricature of things. So, like you had pointed out, whenever people come to me, whether I'm at a conference or whether I'm doing a talk or whatever, and people come to me and they want to share their stories, a lot of times this is such a systemic impact upon them that they're crying. They want to basically download all this information and they have nobody else to tell it to.
Do you find that, Eric, when you I know for me, when I meet with a witness, they want to know everything that I know, and it's really hard to get 30 odd years across. So some of them want to know everything and it all spills out, but others, it's like they tell you and then you've got to pull the account out of them, kind of thing. Like, is it like that for you, or is it different?
I find a mixed bag when it comes to interviewing eyewitnesses. Some are reluctant to even share their story. They're emotionally traumatized or mentally traumatized, and they don't know what they experienced. They've never seen something. Because to them, the subject matter doesn't exist. It never existed until they have that one encounter, and it changes their whole perspective of thinking and everything they were brought up and raised on. So it has a very traumatic impact on their life. And others are so excited about it. They've had that belief, they've had that possibility in their mind that this thing is real, and they have their experience, and they're so excited, and they want to know everything there is to know. And I try to tell them, I don't know everything there is to know. After 20 plus years of doing this, I'm still finding myself asking questions and trying to learn as much as I possibly can. So there is no way to share everything you know with that witness, simply because we don't know it all.
Yeah, sorry about that. I was distracted by that. It's exactly the same here in the UK. There's a lot of stigma attached to seeing any cryptid here because it isn't a household thing. It's not. We've just started seeing commercials that have Bigfoots in them, and that's just this year, say end of 2017, 2018, and we've just started getting favourable newspaper reports. But that's in the last month, at least the last month, 6 weeks. That's how new it is in the UK for people. So it's a similar thing. They're really scared to tell me what's happened, but they really want to share with somebody because they're so worried.
Oh, yeah, good point there, my friend. You're listening to Eric Altman on the Crypto Realm on the Paranormal UK Radio Network. I'm so glad that you're here, my friend. Now, talking again about the research and such, we're very lucky that we grew up probably within about 25 miles of each other, but we have as a mentor in this area none other than Stan Gordon, who has been an extreme help to both you and I. And we're lucky that we can actually pattern who we are as researchers after such a great guy.
Oh, without a doubt. I had the privilege of meeting Stan when I was 13 years old. Gosh, so many years ago. And I followed his work very closely from the first time I met him, even going back further than that, reading about him in newspaper articles while he was researching Bigfoot encounters and strange lights in the sky UFO reports, that sort of thing, dating well back into the 1970s. And I was fortunate, as I said, to meet him when I was 13 years old at a mall display. He took the time, as most researchers back then wouldn't usually talk to a child or a kid, but he took the time to talk with me and answer questions. He didn't brush me off, and I was very impressed with that. Excuse me. I felt that he seemed generally interested in helping to teach other folks who were interested in the subject matter. So I immediately took that to heart and began to study his work, study his research, follow his reports, and continue to keep in touch with him through the years. Now, Stan and I work very closely together. We've investigated cases together. If I get something or he gets something, we'll be on the phone calling each other and letting each other know. He's been my mentor for going on close to 35 years. And I'm so grateful that we have Stan Gordon here in Pennsylvania as one of the leading researchers in this field.
Yeah, absolutely. And nearly every conference that I go to, somebody mentions him. I mean, it could be, across the country or even another part of the world, and people know who Stan Gordon is. And for those folks out there that are listening, somebody out there in Europe or in Asia that happens to be a listener, I urge you, look up Stan Gordon and pick up a couple of his books. One book that he has written called The Silent Invasion, about the UFO and Bigfoot. Well, as it was called in the book, an invasion, but there was, many, many sightings across Western Pennsylvania in the mid 70s. Again, I urge everybody to look that up. It's available on Amazon, Stan Gordon's Silent Invasion. Now, let me ask you, Deborah, in the UK, who is your godfather of Bigfootery?
There isn't anybody. There isn't.
Yep.
And, honestly, there isn't anybody. In America, there's lots. I was incredibly lucky many years ago, before, when I very first got onto the internet, I managed to, I don't know how I did it, but I managed to end up in a Skype call with Renee, I can never say his last name, Phil Green, Billy Simmons and Henry May, and I ended up in a telephone call with them, and we did kind of carried that on for a number of years, so I was quite lucky in that respect, that I was able back then, when there was nothing happening in England, to actually talk to some of the guys on the ground and some of the old names. And obviously Iger Bertseb, I would say, in Europe, the amount of work that man has done is undescribable. There's nobody else that can match him, I would imagine. Yeah, so yeah, Billy Green was an old, he gave me lots of good tips.
Well, I'll tell you what's going to happen a decade from now. Somebody's going to be doing a podcast someplace, and there will be a young person in the UK saying that Deborah Hatswell was responsible for setting them on their road in life.
Well, I hope so.
I'm sure of it. Now, Eric, we Deborah and I on our last show talked about a lot of different techniques that revolve around hunting Bigfoot or the woodwoos or the wild man or the green man there in England. What kind of techniques do you employ? Are you a guy that runs out in the woods and starts pounding on trees? Do you use vocalizations? What is your approach to investigations?
Well, to be perfectly honest with you, I have not found one thing that works over something else. So I'm always willing to try different things, new things. I've done the wood knocking, and on occasion I would get a response. I do the imitations of the primate calls, the whooping, the yells, the howls, and occasionally I get a response to that, but they don't always work. So I'm somebody that tries different things when I go out. Sometimes I'll go out and just sit quietly in the woods, listen for hours, and not move from my spot, kind of like you do when you're deer hunting.
Yeah.
Just to observe the forest, to listen, to get the feel of the area, to see if there's anything around. Other times I'll go out and pretend like I'm camping. I'll make noise. I'll talk to myself. I'll whistle. I'll sing, just to draw attention to myself. And again, as I said, other times I'll go out and knock, and I'll make calls and try to draw something in. Nothing really seems to have a specific pattern that shows it works constantly. So I'm always trying different things and different techniques.
It can depend on the area as well, can't it? Certain areas have a feel to them, and I'm the same. Sometimes I just sit down and go incredibly quiet, and I just try and tune into around me. And there are other times when I'll just forage. I'll just go along and I'll look for wild foods and just pick them and just go about me. And sometimes I talk out loud. It just depends on the feel of the place where I am, to be honest, and sometimes who you've got with you.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's what I do. And there are times I don't recommend anybody going out by themselves, because the forest can be a dangerous place. You can fall, get hurt, or you can run into a predator such as a bear or something to that effect. So you have to be careful. And I usually take somebody with me or a small group of people. But if I do have to go out by myself, it depends on where I'm going, the history of the area, and if I've had any experiences there before or not, and what elicited the type of experiences.
I mean, that's it. Sometimes you've got to step foot you get into the forest and you decide there and then what you're going to do. And other times it's planned. I think it's like that for all of us, isn't it? You just do what feels right on the day.
Yeah, it's almost like an intuition, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Now, where are some of your favorite places, Eric, to go squatching, as they say, to use the vernacular over here, the vulgarity we should talk about. So where are some of your favorite places to go out and do your investigations, both in Pennsylvania and elsewhere? Because you have so many friends across this country. I know that you were was it just up in Minnesota not too long ago?
I haven't been to Minnesota yet. I'm hoping to get up there one day, but Ohio has been a great place. I spent a lot of time in Ohio over the years, specifically in an area called the Sasquatch Triangle, which is in the southeastern part of the state. You've heard of Salt Fork State Park.
Yeah.
In southeastern Ohio. I spent a lot of time over there, and I've had some pretty good success. I believe I had an encounter in 2008, October of 2008, where something was throwing rocks at me and a fellow researcher, and pretty much drove us out of the forest. We've heard screams. Some screams were recorded over there while we were investigating. We've seen large tracks in the ground. So Ohio has always been historically a hotbed of activity, and I like to get over there. Here in Pennsylvania, my home state, there are two areas that I frequent, and I frequent them specifically due to the reason of high number of sightings and encounters and activity that I've experienced. And the first being the Chestnut Ridge here in southwestern Pennsylvania. Now, Ron, you're familiar with Chestnut Ridge.
Yeah, without the Chestnut Ridge, also I wouldn't be involved because I grew up. I actually looking out my window right now, I can see it. So I'm 48 years old. So I think that all but about 4 years of my life I've lived in sight of this Chestnut Ridge.
You're very fortunate because I'm about 20 miles away from the Chestnut Ridge. So I look out my window and I see another house. But the Chestnut Ridge is the furthest western ridge of the Appalachian Mountain Range, or the Allegheny Mountains, if you will, the Little Highlands. And it runs from Indiana County all the way down into Preston, West Virginia. It's about 100 miles long, many, many miles wide, and it's a variety of different topography, from hills and valleys to steep mountainous terrain, thick forested areas in some parts, rural villages, small little towns and communities that blanket the ridge from north to south. And it has its own share of strange and supernatural events that have taken place over the past 200-300 years. Anywhere from UFO sightings and strange lights in the sky, strange booms and mysterious noises, cryptid creatures from Bigfoot to flying cryptids to strange cats, large cats like wildcats or mountain lions, black panthers. It has such a strange phenomenon, even haunted locations, Ron. You know that as well.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. It seems to be the hotbed for nearly everything paranormal, to the point that in the 70s it was actually called the Twilight Zone of Pennsylvania. Just a very, very strange mixture of all things paranormal. Like you had said, there's hauntings, and when we're talking about, like, almost every place would have their stories of hauntings. But these seems very concentrated. That's what we're talking about. We have the cryptid sightings of, like, thunderbirds and black cats, like Eric had mentioned. Also Bigfoot and plenty of werewolf sightings as well.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it's a big area for dogman accounts, isn't it, Pennsylvania?
It is. And the Chestnut Ridge serves as a perfect highway. Eric mentioned it's a little over 100 miles long. So if you were, a very elusive animal, you could actually cover, a great distance without ever being seen by simply using it as a highway.
It's not a place I know. I do know State Salt Fork Park because I have a friend there that researches there, Tim Stover. He's researched there for a long, long time. I've actually spoken to some of the fish and game guys from there back in 2008. So I do know that area. I don't know the Chestnut Ridge area, but I would imagine, like the Appalachian Trail, it was what we would call in the UK a green corridor. So lots of access and lots of food along the way.
Right, yeah, it's become a green corridor. At one time, it was completely deforested. For the lumber industry, a lot of coal mining was done on it. So it's returned in full fervor now. I mean, it is a very, like Eric had said, and he did it perfectly to paint the picture. Little small towns nestled along its foothills. a few houses here and there, but for the most part, it is still a very wild, very intimidating place. Whenever Eric said a little bit earlier about never go out investigating by yourself, this is the perfect example. Not so much that a creature might grab you and you'll never be seen again, but there's a lot of, like, not only the snakes, there's a lot of copperheads and rattlesnakes, the venomous snakes here in Pennsylvania, but you also have a great degree of limestone and a lot of outcrops and things like that. So it's very, easy to assume that you get out there and get stuck and break a leg or what have you. So not really that safe of a place, but the perfect place if you want to remain hidden.
Yeah, well, yes, that's it. They don't make it easy for us, do they?
No, they don't. Very few cryptids hide out in Walmart parking lots.
Yeah, exactly. I was just going to ask you, Eric, have you ever been on an investigation where more than one phenomena has happened? I.e., you're out in a Bigfoot and you see lights? Because that kind of happens in the UK.
It happens in Pennsylvania. It happens to me quite frequently, as a matter of fact. To be perfectly honest with you, I was never really, when I first got into the Bigfoot research, I was never really one to tie the phenomenons together. Yeah. I always thought it was its own separate phenomenon, from lights in the forest to UFOs. And sure, Stan talks about it significantly in his books and his research, but I never really bought much into the fact that they might be tied together until I started experiencing it myself. I've been out in the forest on many occasions up in central Pennsylvania, western central Pennsylvania, Clearfield County, up on the Rockton Mountains, where I first experienced the lights in the forest, along with possible Bigfoot activity. And I've also experienced it on the Chestnut Ridge with other investigators when we were out following up on a sighting report or a claim. We go to an area and stake out that area at night, and then we'd see the lights moving through the forest. And our first assumption would be, hey, somebody's over there, there's a flashlight over there. Yeah. And we'd watch light dancing through the trees, and then it would just disappear. And we think, okay, that's kind of strange. If there is somebody out there, why are they walking around in the forest without a light?
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Out here in the forest time of night with a flashlight. But I've seen it many, many times. I've watched lights change from solid white colors to different colors, blues, reds. I've seen them go very high up in the trees, very low, and snake along the ground. And I have no explanation for it. I don't know what they are. But they are pretty intriguing, and to this day, I don't know if they're related to the Bigfoot phenomenon or they just happen to be coexisting in the same location. But I have experienced that phenomenon.
Yeah, the first time I've ever now, Deborah, I'm going to ask you as soon as I'm done with this story here. Have you ever seen one? And I want to hear your story about these lights, because the first time that I've ever witnessed one of these lights, again, Chestnut Ridge area of Western Pennsylvania, and I was out doing research with two other people. And what we do here in Pennsylvania is we cut swaths of land, swaths of trees out on the ridges to put up high tension wires or to do gas wells and things like that. So, every mile or so you'll have this open path where, you can see what's on the horizon. Yeah. And I saw a red light probably about the size of your pinky thumbnail held out at arm's distance. And I assumed that it was a plane on the horizon until the light went and moved in and out of the trees, and you could see it actually moving throughout the forest. That's the first time I've ever experienced one of these earth lights. And immediately what came to mind is what they would call in the UK the idea of fairy lights. Now, have you ever witnessed such a thing?
I have seen it myself, but only once, and that was at dusk. And I've never really spoken about it to any of the UK guys. There's a number of areas in the UK that are old, ancient hill forts, as we call them, like a burial ground. And one that's not too far away from me. I saw a very similar kind of light, but it was a blue flash, almost. It was, don't really know how to describe it. And I've seen it myself in my own research area. But the reason I asked was because there's quite a few places in the UK, very far up in the north, close to Inverness, is a place called the Culbin Forest, and that used to be a town, and there was a huge storm, I think, in the 1700s, and it completely covered the town, and the town's still underneath there, and there's an old forest on it now, and there are so many reports of these ghost lights there, and we're really lucky we have a researcher that lives there, very close to there, so she visits every single day, so we've managed to get them on camera, even in the daytime, and they can be seen with the naked eye in the day.
Yeah, that's incredible. That's incredible. Yeah, like I said, a part of my research, because I am so enthralled with the idea of the fairy realm, I'm trying to start linking all these things together. Are these lights that we see an emanation of some sort of intelligent earth energies that is capable of manifesting themselves in different forms? Hence you have Bigfoot creatures or dogman creatures seen. Is it possible they can interact with the way we perceive the world around us? I think that this is a way a lot of researchers have to investigate. And I know for a fact, one of the great things about Eric Altman, and he may have learned this from Stan Gordon, is that if he takes a case, he does not throw it away and consider it rubbish if it does not fit into his perspective. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. I think you really can't throw away any case unless you can outright debunk it or prove it's a hoax, or maybe a misidentification. But you can't throw away any type of case simply because you don't agree with what the case is made up of or what the witness encountered. There might be a piece of the puzzle in that case that fits into how this is all interrelated. So I don't throw anything out, as odd as it may sound or as off the wall as it may seem to me, or if it doesn't fit my line of thinking. You just simply can't. You might miss something.
I agree 100% with that. And also, when you speak to witnesses consistently over time, you realise that what they're reporting is coming from their point of view. So it might not ever fit the parameters that are out there. So to turn around and say, well, that doesn't tick the boxes, or that's not right for me, you're correct. You're losing half the puzzle.
You do, and there's a lot of different camps over here in the United States, and I'm sure it is the way, and also in the UK, that they fall into, the flesh and blood creature or the interdimensional creature. And I've known many researchers, I'm sure that Eric will agree with me, that if it does not fall into a particular camp, the investigator will simply dismiss the report.
Luckily, these guys like Eric and you and me that say, well, this is silly. Because until we sit down with one, we don't know what the theory is, which theory is correct. So I have to collect as much evidence as I can in the hopes that someday that will be of some use. Is that what it's like for you, Eric?
Well, that's exactly how it is. I collect data, I collect information, I investigate every case because I don't want to miss something. And again, something I don't investigate might be the case that ties it all together. So I try to look at everything and I rule out as much as I can, of course. But I also want to try to take the eyewitnesses' account for what they experience, as you said. It's their point of view and what they experience. So as long as they're coming across as a credible eyewitness and they're not trying to profit from it or get some kind of notoriety or fame, I take their report to heart and I try to follow up on it best I can.
That is incredibly admirable because that's not happening in the UK. I can't speak for in America, but that kind of wasn't happening here in the UK. You didn't fit the box, you didn't get to report. And to me, that seemed, wrong for all the reasons that you gave. And I'm a witness myself, so I've witnessed something incredibly impossible. So who am I to question another man's tale? So I'm the same. I take whatever comes in and you try and debunk it. And if you can't debunk it, then you have to run with it and you have to see where it takes you.
Yeah, and it takes you down the rabbit hole that we talked about a little bit earlier, which makes this world such a fascinating thing. One of the reasons why it's a passion of mine is because it never gets boring. There's always something new on the horizon, and unfortunately, like I said, I've not been an eyewitness to a creature. I've had a lot of type of experiences, what would be regarded as B type of things, but I've had enough anecdotal experience to know that there is something out there waiting to be discovered, and that's what keeps me going, and that's my passion. Now, for somebody like you, that has been an experiencer, you are out there because you want to show people that what you had seen was valid, that you're not making this up, that there's a validity to it. Now, Eric, you have not experienced anything. You've never seen a creature, have you?
Well, I can't say I haven't seen a creature.
Yeah.
I saw something in Salt Fork State Park in October of 2008, which I mentioned earlier. Mm-hmm. I was out in the park very, very late at night after 3 a.m. with another researcher, and we were at one of the picnic areas that's known for sightings and activity. and we had rocks thrown at us. And I'm shortening this encounter down because it's quite a lengthy encounter. But we had rocks thrown at us, and it frightened the person I was with. His name was Mike. I mean, it startled him because it landed nearly 5 feet in front of him. The rock did, and he said it was about the size of a couch cushion or pillow, and it hit the ground. I heard it hit the ground, but I didn't see it. And he turned around and nearly mauled me over, pushed me over, trying to get back to the car to get to safety. And he wanted to leave, so I followed him back to the car and got in the car. As I was backing my car out of the parking lot, the high beams went across this 4-foot tall brush briar patch where the had come from. And in my high beams, for just a few seconds, it appeared that a dark, shadowy figure rose up from behind the bushes. I only got about 2 or 3 seconds look at it in the high beams, and I could see the bluish-white eye shine reflect back. And my reaction was, what in the heck was that? Of course, I couldn't use heck. But I stopped the car, pulled the car back in, put the high beams right on where I saw it, and there was nothing there. So I don't know if it was a play on lights, shadow, anything like that. I saw something that I thought stood up from behind bushes. I did go back the next day to investigate, and I did find the grass behind those bushes was all trampled down and matted. So something definitely had been behind those bushes. What it was, I don't know, and I can't say for sure that what I saw was a creature. It was just something for 2 or 3 seconds in the high beams that appeared to stand up from a crouched position from behind the bush. So that's as close as I've come to, if you want to call it, seeing a creature.
See, that experience to me is more important than an actual face-to-face. Because an actual face-to-face, if we're working on the theory that maybe they are interdimensional or something like that, that for that split second you see the face and that's it, and it's been a wonderful, you know, whether it was wonderful or horrid. The anecdotal accounts, to me, we should be getting them. We should be getting howls and growls and strange dark figures that you can't really make out, because we're saying that these are the habits that they have. So in the UK, I would be incredibly interested in your account, because that has everything that, to me, that a wild man does. Most of the accounts come in that way. It was kind of hiding behind the bushes. We could see that it was upright, and then it crouched down, or the other way around. It will be crouched down and it will stand on 2 legs. But see, to me, your friend acted on a primal fear, and you don't get that from a shadow. His body's picked up on something that has made him push you away to get to the car. Do you get the point I'm trying to make?
Right.
Yeah, it's that fight or flight response.
That's kicked in for a reason. His body has picked up on something in that area that has made him do that. And when you put that together with stones thrown, there aren't any animals that can throw stones. And I would imagine that the stones came from a different direction from the one you saw in the bush.
It came from the same direction.
Right. So then there's your stone thrower then. See, I would add that to my map, because I would want to know that was happening in that area, in the hopes that if somebody else got in touch maybe 2, 3, 4 years down the line, I would then be able to say, well, actually, that happened. That's why I collect it. It might seem like nothing to some people, but to me, those accounts are incredibly important.
Right. And it also makes biological sense, doesn't it? If you're an elusive animal, you don't want to be completely face-to-face confrontational. You're going to try to displace what's ever in your area by not being seen. And if you have the capabilities of an opposable thumb and you can throw a rock, that's truly one of the easiest ways to get somebody out of your area, by saying, hey, look, we're here and we don't want you here. That's a logical way of thinking that an animal or a self-aware hominid or whatever the case may be would get somebody out of their area.
Eric, you must have seen over time lots of things that show you a level of high intelligence, as have I, when you've been out in the field. There's a lot of trickery going on, isn't there?
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
They seem to be, and I don't know, I can't say honestly if this was a Bigfoot that was responsible for it. Whatever animal or being you've encountered seems to be intelligent enough that it always remains out of sight. It always remains hidden from wherever you're looking for. And you mentioned the rock throwing. If you get rocks thrown at you from a direction, you should be able to see something on the FLIR thermal heat seeker that there's something there. And when you're looking, there's nothing there. It's like it knows how to blend in with its environment and hide very, very well. when it does the calls, it seems that in some cases, and I've heard this from other researchers and other witnesses, that it tends to have the ability to mimic other animal calls. People even say they have their own language. So they sound very similar to humans talking, but in an undiscernible language. And they seem to be just very intelligent beings, to the point where they know how to manipulate their surroundings. They know how to use their surroundings to hide and be seen. They know how to torment researchers and witnesses, to play with them, play with their minds, if you will, or to feed their fear and to drive them out of the woods, such as it did Mike with the rock throwing.
Yeah.
So I think they're extremely intelligent, and I think that they are masters of their own domain.
Yeah, I think that's the perfect way of summing it all up. One of the most unnerving things I've heard from researchers is these creatures copying the human voice to the point that they've even been known to call out somebody's name, which really is an intriguing aspect. There is mimicry involved as well, because now we're dealing with something that is, that we're talking about a different type of intelligence, and we're also talking about something that is capable of producing sound, vowels and consonants, which would put it completely on a different plane of thinking that this is just some sort of animal. But yeah, North American tribes, the Native Americans, many reports of these creatures having their own language and their own culture, just simply separated from ours.
Yeah, I think Eric would agree, wouldn't you? That he's
definitely would agree.
When you start in the beginning, you're looking for an ape or an animal, and as you very quickly realise that there is a level of intelligence out there that far in that environment outweighs ours. They are masters of their own environment, as Eric says, and you can't shy away from that.
That's right. Now, let me ask you, Deborah, have you ever seen the movie The Legend of Boggy Creek?
Not years ago. I was thinking that when Eric was talking. It wasn't really around for me. I was in the 2000s when I watched it, but I have watched it,
Yeah, see, that was one of the shows, one of the first times that people actually could see Bigfoot on camera. Besides the Patterson Gimlin film, we're dealing with something that looked very close to being a documentary. It had me, entranced whenever I was a kid, but it looked like, a large hairy monkey, and that's what our image of Bigfoot really is. That's some sort of, ape-like creature. But it may not be that way. That's what I'm saying. This is such a complicated field that we really have no idea what we're talking about. We're talking about one person's perception of this thing, but that may indeed not be what we're dealing with.
I can't agree enough. It's impossible to come down on a theory. I flip between, sometimes I think I'm dealing with a hominid, other times I'm thinking I'm dealing with something that's almost supernatural in a way. Some of the things that I've seen astound me, but I don't know if that's my misinterpretation of some ability that I am seeing as magical.
Yeah, well, about 2 years ago, a lady came up with me with this story. Again, not very far from the Chestnut Ridge. It's in Pennsylvania, but probably about 25 miles from the Chestnut Ridge. But she talked to me about a Bigfoot that actually materialized in her living room. And this went on for a period of a couple of weeks. It would just simply appear and follow her around, observing her doing her household chores and talking to her telepathically, not asking any kind of questions or anything, but just basically saying that, I don't mean you any harm. And this went on for a couple of weeks, and it vanished without any kind of pomp and ceremony, just like it came. So what are we supposed to do with these kind of tells as well? Are we saying that this lady is completely a wacko, or are we going to take some sort of credence and say what she was sane enough to tell me this story? It meant something to her, and she knew that she was facing ridicule if she would tell the wrong person, but she still needed to tell somebody. So what are we supposed to do that? Now, of course, I never wrote that story off, because she believed that there was an 8-foot tall Bigfoot creature that visited her in her house.
Have you experienced that, Eric? People have told you things like that where they see them at home?
Not in the house necessarily, but around the house. I've talked to witnesses in the past who've seen them frequently around the exterior of homes, looking in windows and doors, but never in the home, where it's communicated telepathically or observed them doing their daily chores or routine in the house. So I haven't experienced that, or I haven't talked to any witnesses who have experienced that.
I have here in the UK. I've spoke to people who've experienced something like that, and I tend to find that I usually ask them whether they have an ability with animals or earth energy, and they usually fall down on one or the other, or they're empathic in some way. And I wonder if they are just like a beacon, like you get beacons to the spirit world. Maybe some Sasquatch can see, some people have an ability and they can see through that realm and they can communicate. I think sometimes it might just be that.
No, I think that's a good point. I think that's a very good point. Actually, Stan Gordon hinted at a case, actually at several cases in his book, Silent Invasion, where people would be witnessing a Sasquatch or a Bigfoot in one area, and by the time they would drive back home, there was a Bigfoot waiting around their house or in their backyard. So there's something going on that's attracting either these people to these creatures or these creatures to the people.
It could very well be. Like I say, it might be an energy thing. It might be something they can pick up on. I don't know. I don't have the answer, but I do know that people report it, and they report it in Russia and across Europe as well. But back then, when we were prehistoric, we had abilities that we no longer use now. Like, when a family member's ill or one of your children's ill, you just know. You don't know how you know, but you just know, and you and your partner can pick up on things without speaking. I think it might be a developed ability that we have lost, or most of us have lost, and maybe some people just have a tiny little bit of that left, and they can zone in a way that we can't. So no, I don't. I always take those reports and I write them down. I've had reports from bush guys who were out in the bush for 6 and 7 week camping, and I've had actual out of body experiences. And I was the first person to take him seriously, I think, and share his story.
Wow. See, there's so much, and anytime we have a guest on, we simply scratch the surface, don't we? I mean, we're not talking about, this isn't the end and be all of our conversation, our discussion with Eric. I mean, there's so much more that we can follow up on, but every question opens up a whole new realm of questions. And that's what's really interesting about the cryptid realm. The crypto realm is that we are trying to get to the bottom of something that really is has been intriguing us since the dawn of humanity.
Well, what's your future plans, Eric? Where are you now in your research, and what's your plans for as you go ahead?
Well, over the years, I've not only learned a lot about the cryptid realm and the paranormal realm, but I've learned a lot about people. Yeah. And we talked about a little bit before we started recording. You tend to learn the good and the bad, and unfortunately there are some bad elements in the field that rear their ugly heads from time to time. So over the past 4 or 5 years, I've kind of shied away from groups and working with just anybody in the field. I've kind of scaled everything down. I work with a select few of individuals, and I continue to do that on a lower scale base. I'm not as out there in the public eye as I used to be, simply because you're dealing with so much information coming in from the crypto realm and the human realm, if you will. And I've kind of, I guess you say, I've gone low key. So I still do the research. I still go out in the field. I still investigate cases that come in through the BFRO or through the Pennsylvania Cryptozoology Society or any other group that I do associate with. I check those out. I network with other researchers and investigators such as Ron. I keep in people that I know and are good people to work with. And I keep doing my kind of thing there. I look into cases, and if I think they're valid and they seem to warrant further investigation, that's what I continue to do.
I'm kind of at that stage because you've set up a foundation. You've spent decades, haven't you, setting up a foundation, and now you've done that. So you are entitled to pull back and let people find their own way, and and you can concentrate in a quality rather than quantity way. I think we're all at that stage, aren't we?
You know what Eric is a gentleman. Actually, he's sugarcoating a lot of this kind of stuff, and I appreciate that. I mean, he is a consummate gentleman, and if anybody really wants to get in touch with a true researcher, I would urge you to get in touch with him. Now, Unfortunately, he doesn't have a book out yet, but I urge him to get a book out. But absolutely, he is a true human being, and he cares about what other people think. So you're not going to find a better researcher. But Eric, let me ask you a question. If people do want to get in touch with you, how do they do that?
Well, I am out there still in the public eye, even though I'm more lower key than I once was. I'm available on Facebook, at Eric H. Altman or Eric Howard Altman. If you type that in, you'll find me. I have my own website, ericaltman.net. I'm still, even though it's on hiatus, I still host and produce my own podcast. I've done that for 10 years, Beyond the Edge Radio, which, Ron, you've been a guest on, I believe, 2 or 3 times.
I have. It's a great show, and I'm hoping to hear it again soon.
Yeah, it'll be back sometime hopefully this fall.
Excellent.
I'm a conference event organizer. As a matter of fact, I have an event coming up next summer that I'm in the pre-planning stages right now, pre-organizational stages right now. And Ron's going to be one of our speakers at the event. It's called the Pennsylvania Bigfoot Camping Adventure. And it's kind of, it is a charity fundraiser. We're doing it for 3 local charities in the area. But we are also giving the opportunity for folks who have an interest in cryptozoology, specifically Bigfoot, giving them the chance to come out and hear from seasoned veteran researchers, people who've been in the field investigating for a long time, to ask them questions. They get a chance to go out in the woods with us on hikes to see what we do. There are workshops set up for folks that want to learn how to maybe make a plaster cast, or the proper way of identifying data and information, evidence, and what tools to use. So the event's coming up next May 31st, June 1st, and June 2nd of 2019. And it's a chance to give back to the public, to let them know that what we're doing is legitimate, how they can do it, and be legitimate in what they do. And in the same sense, helping out some local charities in the Pennsylvania area.
Yeah, I'm very proud to be a part of it, because not only is it for charity, but it's also a family event as well too. This is something that you could easily break your children to. It's extremely affordable, and it really is a good time for everybody. But again, Eric, you're being very humble and modest. I mean, the people that you have on your lineup are world-class researchers that you would see at any conference around this country or around the world.
Yeah, we have 12 speakers coming in. 6 of them I've already made. I still have 6 more to release the information on who will be speaking. We've got some celebrity guests coming in, as well as special guests, whether they're in the paranormal field or cryptozoology field. I wanted to try to bring in folks that I feel are good, solid researchers who have a wealth of information to share and are very well educated on the subject matter, and that are also, good friends of mine that can come in and help us, and they agree with the cause that we're doing, to help us raise the money and help raise awareness of the field and get it out there to some of the younger generation that's getting involved in this.
And you're also going to be at a conference in West Virginia coming up too, aren't you?
Yeah, I used to do a lot of speaking appearances. I probably did 15 to 20 a year a few years ago, but like I said, I've cut back on a lot of what I've done. I have 3 events coming up this summer, and one of them is taking place this Saturday, June I think it's the 16th, over in Wheeling at the casino in Wheeling, West Virginia. It's the Mountain State Paranormal Conference, I think it's called, Mystery Conference, and such names as John Zaffis will be there, Rosemary Ellen Guiley, David Weatherly, Dave Spinks, Sean Austin, myself, I'll be there. Stan Gordon will be there. There's a variety of different researchers talking on different subject matters. So it's a fun event. If anybody wants to check it out, you can go to my Facebook page or my website, ericaltman.net, and there's information on how to find out more about that event. And hopefully, Ron, you and I will be working together on a couple of events in the near future.
Oh, I cannot wait. I tell you what, it's a true pleasure working with somebody as pleasant and as nice as you are. And even whenever I was getting started in this field, you were never critical, and you were always very, very helpful. So again, like I said, I'm glad that we've spoke to you before on the show, on my other show, Inside the Goblin Universe. But this is our first time on this show, and I really wanted to have you as our first guest. But as we said at the outset of this program, there were storms going on. Skype was giving us some difficulties. But as far as the second guest, I couldn't have asked for anything better, buddy, and I appreciate that.
Well, I appreciate both of you asking me to be part of the show. It's been a real thrill and honor to be with you this afternoon or this evening or wherever you're listening in tonight. Thank you so much for having me on. It was great to talk with both of you guys and share some information, pick some brains, and learn a little bit more.
That's right. That's right. Now, are you working on any particular investigation right now? I know that you're big on confidentiality, but do you have anything in the works that you're excited about?
I've gotten a few leads from Stan and from a fellow PCS researcher about some activity taking place not far from where I live. Reports of seeing a tall, upright white creature around the Delmont, Pennsylvania area, hearing some strange audible cries and screams coming from Harrison City, Pennsylvania, and a couple of odd reports coming out of the Jeanette, Pennsylvania area. So I'm looking into those cases. I did follow up on some stuff up in New Kensington, Pennsylvania, which is a suburb city outside of Pittsburgh, just north of Pittsburgh, some possible activity up there. So we are getting information in and some reports in. Most of them are secondhand, so I'm following up on those as best I can.
Right, now keep in mind the place where the white Bigfoot was sighted in Delmont, that is the area where the lady had reported the Sasquatch manifesting itself inside her home.
Yes, I am familiar with that. So I'm not sure if the two are related, but I know that there have been historically reports coming out of the Delmont area, the Murraysville area. So we'll have to keep our eyes and ears open to see what develops with that.
I cannot wait to hear more about this, my friend. Like I said, it was a complete joy having you on our program. And Deborah, I'm glad you were finally able to meet via the internet, Mr. Altman.
I'm hoping Mr. Altman will come back on because there's so many questions I have to ask him. So hopefully, when you're not so busy, it would be lovely if you could come back on.
It would be my pleasure. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
And then maybe also during the Bigfoot camping adventure next year, maybe we could do something along a podcast right from there, because he's going to have so many people there, so many great guests. But also, some of the people that are attending are just as fascinating as the guests themselves.
No doubt, Ron.
Yep, I'm looking forward to it, my friend. Well, I'll tell you what, my timekeeper, Deborah, there, I lose all track of time and space whenever I do this. I do not keep any track. What are we looking like now with time?
I'm not sure, because remember the call cut for me and I was just about to message her. So I've only got 46:54, but we had about 13 minutes, so we're probably about the right time, Ron.
Yeah, yep, I think that's the case. So if that's okay, what we're going to do then, Eric, right now is we're just going to do the sign-off. I appreciate you having us on, or I appreciate you being on our program, and then we will wrap this up on our end, and I will talk to you very soon. All right, well, I'll tell you what, the time just simply flew by, and so we're going to have to bid adieu to Eric Altman until next time. But I had a good time. How about you, Deb? You have a good time?
I had an absolutely fantastic time, and I can't wait to do it again. We will have Andy McGrath from Beast of Britain.
That's right, Andy McGrath next week. All right, my friend Eric, I want you to know how much this meant to me for you being on our show, and we will sign off, and next time, but we'll definitely have you as a guest coming up.
Thank you both very much for having me. It's been a real pleasure to talk with you and Deborah.
All right, well, I am Ron Murphy.
And I'm Deborah Hatswell. Good night.
Good night, folks.